Good morning. Thank you very much for inviting me to be here this morning with you. So here I am. So I'm a child psychiatrist in Nashville, Tennessee, in the United States, and I'm a forensic psychiatrist there, although I'm now retired, and so I go to a lot of meetings, and I like to give talks. But I want to make sure we all are on the same big page. And there are many, many parts to parental alienation theory. So here they are. Here are some of them. The history of the theory, how to identify parental alienation, how to prevent it, interventions. This one called causation, prevalence, and so on refers to research on parental alienation. What are legal issues? And we're in the law school. How do we educate other professionals? And how do we advocate on behalf of children and families? So all these topics, many of these topics are going to be presented here today and tomorrow. But I'm adding, in the scope of parental alienation theory, I want to add one topic, and that is misinformation. And how can we counteract misinformation regarding this topic? Because the idea is that if we're going to study parental alienation and we're going to do something about it, we really need to understand the truth about parental alienation. And we also need to understand the false information. So what I'm going to do this morning is I'm going to give you some examples of misinformation, recurrent misstatements about parental alienation theory. And I'm going to tell you about some research that I've done regarding this topic. And then I want to say a few things about what to do about it. What are strategies that we can use to address misinformation? So here are some examples of recurrent misstatements about parental alienation theory, and just 3 or 4 examples. This particular one was in a journal that I'm familiar with, the United States, the Journal of the American Academy of Psychiatry and the Law. And there was an article published in this journal. This was the name of the article: Parental Alienation Debate Belongs in the Courtroom, and so on. And then I'm going to give you some examples of what we do when we see misinformation. So this is one example. This article was published in a journal, and so my colleague and I published a new article in the same journal a few months later, in which we responded to that first article. So that's one thing we can do if there's misinformation. Here's another thing we can do. This was an important book. This book was published by the American Psychological Association, and it had mistakes in it. The very first chapter had false information about me and about parental alienation. So in this case, we complained to the editor of the book, the publisher of the book, the president of the American Psychological Association, and they did correct it. They corrected what it said in the book. So that's something you can do if there's misinformation. Here's another example in a journal called Children and Youth Services Review. This was very simple. There was a very tiny, big article. There's a very tiny sentence with misinformation. And in that case, we requested it, and they immediately fixed it. So you can do that. Here's one more example. This was in another journal of the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers, which is an organization in the United States. This one did not work out very well. In this case, there was a big, big article. The whole article was mistaken, and we complained to the author, the editor, and the publisher, and nobody wanted to change it. So that article is still there. So sometimes we can make changes and corrections, sometimes we can't. Here's one more that's been mentioned. About a year ago, there was an article published by the United Nations, specifically the Human Rights Council of the United Nations, And this document has hundreds of false statements. And we tried to get it corrected. We did not get that corrected. So sometimes we can make corrections, sometimes we're not able to. So of course, this has been going on for years. Even going back to Richard Gardner, he was told lots of misinformation, and he tried to do something about it. He wrote his own articles in which he tried to correct it. And so this is an article that he wrote before his death. So I've gotten very interested in this topic, and I've done some research, which I want to tell you about. So actually, this is a journal that I published an article in, and this is the cover of the journal. And I think you can see this diagram on the cover is a little confusing, that you probably can't understand what it's about. Well, that's on purpose. We did that on purpose because we wanted people to open up the journal and to read the article. So this is the article that we published about a year ago called Scholarly Rumors. And that scholarly rumors are things that are published and one person writes it and then some other author copies it and then some other author copies it. That's why it's called rumors. And we used a particular method that's used in research called citation analysis. And this is what we found. We were studying the idea that there's the same misinformation is printed over and over and over again. So I have to tell you here the false information, and then I'm going to tell you the true information. So let's read this together. This is the false information that has been published more than 100 times. That parental alienation theory assumes that the favored parent has caused parental alienation in the child simply because the child refuses to have a relationship with the rejected parent without identifying or proving alienating behaviors by the favored parent. So that is a mistake. That's incorrect. That's false information because we don't say that. The true information is that there are many reasons why a child might have contact refusal, or what's sometimes called a parent-child contact problem. In other words, we do not say that every time the child refuses a parent, the reason is parental alienation. Hope everybody understands that. What the critics say, we say, they say that every time a child has contact refusal, the answer is parental alienation. We don't say that. That makes us look stupid for people to say that we say that. But what we say is that if a child has contact refusal, there are many possibilities for why that might happen. So that's the information that we were interested in studying. And we published that article I showed you, and now we have a new article. My co-author, whose name is Shenming Zhu, who's a colleague of mine at Vanderbilt University. So we have a new article coming out called Misinformation Echo Chamber. And this is what we did in that article. I want to try to explain to you how we do this research. We read the literature and we identify articles with the same misinformation. So you see all these dots here? Each dot is a different article, and they're chronological. The oldest one is way, way on the left. The more recent ones are way, way on the right. And the size of the dot means how many times that article was quoted by somebody else. So first of all, we find all these articles, and then we do what's called citation analysis. We look for what are the connections. So here, I don't know if you can see the lines, but there are hundreds of lines, which are little arrows that go from one article to another, to another, to another. And that shows you how the misinformation spread from the first article in 1994 all the way to the recent ones in 2022. I don't know if you can see all the little lines, but each one shows how the misinformation spread. And so something we discovered, the new thing we discovered, is that the spread is not even. The spread is not sort of random across all these journals. Instead, the spread goes to a particular journal. A particular journal is responsible for 1/2 of those statements of misinformation. And this is what we did. Well, first of all, this is how it works. This is how it started. This is way back in the beginning, 1994. That's the beginning. And then this is how this is how it ends here in 2022. So you can see in the beginning, there's only one. And in the end, there are many, many articles with the same misinformation. So like I said, we found that many of these are from the same journal. And this diagram with the arrows are all articles that are connected to one journal in the United States. And the connection is either some of these articles, there are 60 of them. Some of them are articles published in the journal, and some of them are articles written by members of the editorial board of that journal. Using it here for a second. So altogether, there are 17 articles in the journal. There are 57 articles in the editorial board of that journal. Excuse me. There. There we go. And so altogether, 60 of those articles are connected to the same journal. What journal are we talking about? I haven't given you the name of it yet, but I'm going to tell you the name in just a second. This is an example of how it increases over the last few years. And the total has increased, but also the articles in red are the number of articles in that particular journal. So what journal are we talking about? This is the name of it. The Journal of Child Custody. That the editor of that journal, everybody knows this. I'm not telling you a secret that the editor, his name is Dr. Geffner, Robert Geffner, and he does not like the idea of parental alienation. And he'll tell you that he doesn't like it. So he has published many articles that are criticisms of parental alienation theory. That journal has a new name. This is the new name, the Journal of Family Trauma, Child Custody, and Child Development. Now, I might tell you that this is what the publishers say. You don't have to read this whole thing, but the publisher says the accuracy and the content of the content should not be relied upon. Well, that's true. The articles in this journal, you should not count on their being accurate. And it's true that readers should independently verify with primary sources. That's what they should be doing. If they went back and looked at the primary sources, they would not be publishing all this misinformation. So what can we do about this? So there are several things to do. We can make a complaint to the publisher. I told you about, we did that once, several times. We can publish a rebuttal. We've done that. We can write a book trying to state the true information. You can write a letter to the editor. Nowadays, people watch videos. We've made videos about misinformation. You can make a campaign. And mainly, when you read articles, don't believe everything you see. So here's a book. This is a book that I did a couple of years ago. And each chapter has true information. And at the end of the chapter, it has misinformation about that topic. So that's one way to try to clean up misinformation. Here's another book. This is important. This book is published by the American Bar Association in the United States. And this is about parental alienation. And it has a whole chapter on misinformation. So we've tried, my colleagues and I have tried to correct these problems. Well, can we talk to people that we disagree with? Can we engage in legitimate dialogue with the people that we sometimes disagree with? So there is an organization that is trying to do that. You may have heard of this organization, AFCC, the Association of Family and Conciliation Courts, the big organization from many different countries, many different disciplines, but it has to do with professionals who have an interest in family law. And we have an idea at AFCC to have a committee of people who disagree with each other. So there are several of us, right now there are 6 or 7 of us, and we don't agree, but we sit down and we talk together and we try to understand each other. And I hope that eventually we will publish what we agree on. And this is an example of things that we agree on. We agree, for instance, that domestic violence is a serious problem, but sometimes there are false allegations of domestic violence. Everybody would agree with that, almost, I think. And I think we agree on this. Parental alienation is a serious problem, but sometimes there are false allegations of parental alienation. So our committee has tried to have conversations and see what do we agree on and what do we don't agree on. And in fact, this project was presented. It's called the Peace Talks of the AFCC, and it was presented in Boston in the United States a few months ago. So the Peace Talks are having an actual result that we're actually getting together. We're announcing our conclusions, and that happened a few months ago. That process, the Peace Talks, have continued. Actually, well, this is what it said a few months ago in June. Depolarizing by example, AFCC Peace Talks on parent-child contact problems. So we've continued that, and in fact, it's being presented again tomorrow in the United States, in Ohio. There's another presentation on the same topic, and I was supposed to be there, but I'm not there because I'm here today, so that's fine. But the project is continuing, and this is what tomorrow they're talking about: AFCC Peace Talks, reflecting on progress and engaging feedback. So that's a real effort to try to engage in conversations regarding disagreements and misinformation about parental alienation. It's a lot of trouble. Why are we going to all this trouble? Why do we sit down and have these conversations? Many reasons. First of all, if we have a conversation with people, we increase the number of people who understand parental alienation theory. You know, now the members of my committee, I think, understand it better. And it's the only real way to reduce misunderstandings. Some of what the misinformation is just because people have read the wrong thing, or they misunderstood what they read. So when we discuss it, we reduce that. It helps us, if we are teaching parental alienation, it helps us do it better. Because if we have conversations with people that we don't agree with, it helps us understand why there are misunderstandings. And it helps us understand weak areas. Maybe we need more research. And maybe there are some things we say that are incorrect. So it helps us make corrections. And finally, we make friends. And if we have conversations with people we don't agree with, we meet interesting people. So that's what I wanted to tell you today about misinformation and the new research that we're trying to do and the steps we are trying to take to reduce the amount of misinformation. So I hope that's helpful to you. This is the organization that I'm the president of, Parental Alienation Study Group. You're welcome to join the organization. That's our website. Come to the website and visit it, and maybe we'll see you there. Thank you very much.